That doesn't mean once you vote, then the next time you speak is at the ballot box in 5 years' time, right? So active citizenry requires that we are involved all the time.
So we interpret disagreement as disloyalty. I fear we will not progress as a people and we won't mature as a society.
PM Lawrence Wong, I'll tell him to be bold. I think don't just embrace tweaks, also embrace change. And that starts with really listening to voices that you may not really want to hear.
A lot more conversations, sensible conversations about things that are everyday issues. We need more people, more platforms, more forums talking about it so that you demystify it. My dear friends, welcome.
Thank you.
Why do you have this
Thank
cheeky
you.
smile?
No, I'm happy that you call me a friend.
I thought it's because Spain won.
Yes.
You know, Spain. I mean, did you stay up to watch the match?
No, I wanted to, but I really couldn't.
Why?
And I should have because I thought about it even in my sleep. So it's like, I might as well have stayed up.
I mean, look at the two of us. We both stayed up, not together. We both stayed up to watch the game.
That would be a whole podcast
and
on
look
its
how energetic we are.
Yes, that's true.
Energized as well.
Yes.
Probably because I'm seeing you. But Kendall, what do you think of the match?
I don't watch soccer. I'm the most boring person you ever meet. Yeah,
And what are you doing here?
Yes, you call it soccer.
I call it soccer.
You call it soccer. Anyway, we are here to talk about a different kind of game called politics, called nation building, whatever. But that's really what we want to talk about. So in short, it's about, so how's it going? Singapore, how is it going for us? So it doesn't all have to be about politics, but let's just talk frankly for 1 hour about how we are doing as a people, right? So before that, you guys are well known, but you're not celebrities, unlike me.
Yeah.
True. I concede.
So, Anthea, with your inimitable hat, okay? And how many of these hats do you have, by the way?
Quite a number. And every time I appear with them, someone...
So for Imelda Marcos, it's shoes, and for you, it's hats.
No, not that.
Not that big a
not
collection.
that volume. Because I'm not rich. But there'll always be comment about how they don't like the hat.
Oh.
When I do podcast or interviews, someone would put in a comment.
Oh.
Because I guess it's
But we
not...
like your hat.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I like it too. I mean, it saves me a lot of time thinking about what to do with my hair.
So, on a more serious note,
Yeah.
NMP, nominated Member of Parliament from 2018 to 2020. I would say for many past NMPs, you are the leader of the pack. Because you
Don't know what that means, actually.
you demonstrated leadership in bringing all of us together, many of us, to contribute articles for this book that was launched about the thoughts and ideas of NMPs, right? It's very well put together. And of course, you're a well-known social activist, right? Thank you for doing what you're doing. Right?
Thank you.
Now, this weighing how many kgs? Okay, on my right.
You just called him an Abibi.
No.
Oh, that too. Okay. So this is Associate Professor Walid Jumlat. He's with the National Technological University. Nanyang Technological University's School of Social Sciences, right?
Yes.
And your area of interest include state-religion relations, political parties and elections, political Islam, and Southeast Asian politics.
Yes,
Today, we're not going to talk about Islam, per se, right? That has to be a complete separate discussion. Most importantly, your claim to fame is your Teh Tarik with
Walid podcast.
Walid meaning you. Okay. So you drink your own Teh Tarik also?
Yes.
You actually
fun fact, for the 100th episode, it was Teh Tarik with Vishwa. He hosted it. And
Oh,
he interviewed me for the
100.
for the
And it was a
100th
lot of fun.
episode. It was
a lot of fun. And you got 17,000, more than 17,000 followers.
Yes. Should be more, but
But it's okay. I mean,
they will do that.
there's a limit to how much you can drop your standards. And last but certainly not least, sitting there in that corner looking serious is Ng Kian Boon. I met you during the hustings of the last election, right? General election. And I must say I was very, very impressed with your style of analysis, which later I found out was mathematical, And you are trained in SMU.
Yeah, in mathematical finance.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means you take mathematics, right, and you try to make money off it by applying it in finance.
Does it work?
So far, not yet.
Not for him.
And the reason why
For
I'm
Wall
so
Street.
and the reason why I'm so serious, right, is because everybody here is so learned. I'm like the least intelligent one here.
No,
so I'm a bit
that's not
stressed.
true at all.
Yeah, but
No, false modesty is one of those terrible things. Don't do that. Okay?
we'll see.
Nonsense.
Try and keep some virtues. Leave him to be.
Some virtues. We got 1 hour to demonstrate some of those virtues. Okay, but very importantly, you just put out a video and it's titled "Why David Neo Can Survive a Bad Joke." How's it been being accepted on the ground?
Still alive. Still.
You're alive.
It's not getting into any trouble for that. Yeah, but there's an asymmetry in Singapore's political landscape. So I thought sometimes it's worth highlighting that there may be different treatments for how different politicians in different parties are treated after a major incident. So this is just one of many highlights, I guess, that's happened since election, before election.
But could you elaborate on that observation?
What do you think about it? At the highest level, right? If a politician did something major, there will be coverage on it. There will be consequences. There's impact. But if it's something negative that happens to the opposition parties, one person's impact is significantly larger than that if it would happen to a PAP politician. And in a similar light, if there's something positive that happens, right, it's almost that you view that one PAP politician's credit is the whole party's credit. Whereas when it comes to the opposition, it's not just like Workers' Party, it's everybody that's implicated in the overall impact. So that's something it's something that resonates with me over and over again. And it's something I talk about in my podcast all the time. And David Neo is just one of many symptoms of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that we are going after David Neo or anyone in particular in this podcast, but I guess it begs the question, how serious are we about changing the way we conduct the business of politics? How serious are we? We've been hearing that being articulated by several political leaders, that we're going to change the style so that we a lot more, it appeals a lot more to the younger generation, which is very important. But has that change taken place since the last election where these calls were made? Anthea?
I would also want to add that it's not about just how we conduct the business of politics, but also leadership. I think that's actually more important, especially for me, since I'm really doing the work of leadership, organizational development, right? Especially with
your day job.
With groups like Work Well Leaders, right? The whole idea is to bring together CEOs and boards to look into how you don't just make money when you are leading a group of people in a organization, but actually also how do you make sure everyone thrives, right? And that's where leadership is really important. So I actually myself put a post about that statement. I didn't want to name him because, like you said, it's not about going after the individual, but to unpack what he meant by "I have no time for movies." Or actually, unfortunately, he said, "Ministers have no time for movies," which I think that was the first sort of slip. Because if he said "I," then it's okay lah, right? But when you sort of bring along the entire cabinet with you, then it's also then begging the question of, are we glorifying exhaustion and busyness? Look, I mean, I know he meant it as a joke, but the delivery didn't quite come through. So maybe he needs some training from Walid. Walid has a better delivery when it comes to comic interjections.
I don't know what that means, but never mind.
Yeah, never mind. So I feel like that when you're a leader, you know you're going to be scrutinized, and you know you will be criticized or critiqued. That's part of the course as a leader. If you don't want to do that, then you just have to not be a leader. But I think with him, with that statement, it speaks so much about how we're still perpetuating this notion, which I would argue is misguided, that when you have no time for something, it just makes you such a hardworking, your work ethics is right up there for celebration and all of that. And I think we really, if talk about wanting to change, I don't think it's just the young people who want a different way of not just leadership and politics, but also the way our society is.
But do you think that change is happening?
I think in parts of it is, right? I feel like this 4G is the one that has actually put forth for the first time mental health and well-being as a national priority, right? Now, at least that is that intent that is very clearly put out. So bias, yes, but at least that's one thing that I'll give them a
bias
tick.
Because that's an area of concern for you.
Deep concern, continue to be, and it will be because our mental health prevalence, despite us having come through COVID, has only continued to be on the upward trend.
Okay. So, question for you, Professor. Okay. There's this statement that our Prime Minister, Lawrence Wong, made. Quote, "I welcome the opposition presence in Parliament. In this term of government, I fully expect the Workers' Party to keep us on our toes, raising questions, scrutinizing our policies, and holding us accountable." Us meaning the PAP government. This is their role as the opposition, and I am sure they will play it vigorously. In the face of it, it's a very encouraging, much needed affirmation of the respective role of the ruling party and the opposition, but has it panned out the way the Prime Minister, have things panned out the way the Prime Minister spoke in this instance?
Not really. I don't think that has happened since PM Wong has taken over. I think the rhetoric has been good, and I think a lot of us welcome it. But if you look at the political space with regard to the opposition parties, with regard to critics, has it really changed? I'm not sure. I don't think it has changed that much. And it's not because we cannot look at politics just through individual personalities. As much as personalities matter, they matter. But ultimately, these personalities operate in a structure. They also come from a party, a cadre party like the PAP, which reproduces itself. So you cannot really expect drastic changes. So I understand the rhetoric is great, but I don't think it's the first time we've heard that as well. But also, the saying, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, right? And I don't know whether we have seen enough to say that there has been a significant shift.
Actually, my view of that is it needs to be a concrete step, like the professor says, right? And I think one of the concrete steps is to introduce non-PAP members in the government parliamentary committees, which is sort of a pseudo-shadow government, right? That examines the actions and policies that the parliament itself introduces into Singapore.
That's interesting,
That's
but
the GPCs,
quite unrealistic. I don't think there's any government in the world, correct me if I'm wrong, where the party in government actually has opposition members in their party committees.
Oh, actually, there are. I mean,
It's
even
very
in
common.
some cabinets, they have opposition members on. So I don't
That's
think
when
it's
it's
such
a coalition.
No.
No.
Even Obama had a Republican in his cabinet.
No, and in UK, when I visited, the UK Westminster, they do have that. They call them the committees.
Yeah.
So they actually create committees for the different portfolios, right? Whether it's finance or manpower, and then it's actually it's actually made up by the MPs from different sides of the aisle. Actually, different sides of the
have they
house.
worked?
Well, I think so. I think so the difference is between Singapore and the others is we have never had a transition. We have never had a turnover in government.
Yeah.
So everything revolves around the PAP, right? So change would, a lot of times it takes the PAP to move something. But in other countries, it is very normal for these things to happen because there is a turnover in government. And not just the GPC one, which is an idea I am fully in support of. You can institutionalize the leader of the opposition position.
It's a point that I raised in one of my commentaries.
Yeah, indeed. And that is, the leader of the opposition is chosen by the people. It shouldn't be at the discretion of the Prime Minister.
And not appointed by the leader of the ruling party.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It's a bit odd.
Yeah.
It is. And it is actually institutionalized in the constitution of the other Westminster models, right? And so that's, which is also why I took issue because then it becomes, and I liken to this metaphor, right? It's as if you've been appointed and then when, you're going to be let go, your boss actually asks all your colleagues to come and, say, hey, should we let him go or not? When actually you were the one who appointed this person, right? So then the power really lies also still in you to let go.
Yeah.
And that's why it becomes a little bit tricky and awkward as well, actually.
But I'd like to bring the discussion back to the sentiment expressed by the Prime Minister that I quoted just now. If more of these sentiments are expressed and then it doesn't jive with the reality on the ground, credibility will erode.
Yeah.
And I was talking to some of my friends and they were saying, and they're all fairly neutral, politically neutral individuals. They said, if there is no real intention of opening the space, then there's no need to make these pronouncements. Go back to hardcore politics. But if your words and your action don't jive, there is a serious threat and risk of losing credibility. How serious, Kian, how serious do you think that is?
I think my personal view is that I think at this point in time, the government is serious about being more open. I think at this point in time, I think the challenge would be, are the people ready for this? I think one of the sort of simplistic way I look at this is that when the government is more open and is a bit more transparent about what's happening, then people may start to judge them on that. So a phenomenon of that is, I think the government is trying to be less economic focused and more feelings focused. So whenever they talk about the policy, they want to talk about how it makes the people feel before they get into the meat of things and get things done. But as they talk about how it makes people feel, one of the unfortunate sequence of events that happens is that they talk about this is the feeling, this is what has happened, and we'll keep monitoring. And that this phrase monitoring, right, has rubbed many people the wrong way because it feels that the government is not doing anything. But this is not something that the 4G leaders have done recently. This is what the 3G has done, except that they didn't explicitly communicate it. So as the government face friction from the people on monitoring and talking more about feelings, will the people give them enough space to breathe, right, and try to effect some of these results before they kind of give up? So that's something I kind of think about.
Okay, so that's an interesting perspective, right? I mean, I'm noticing that there's a lot of public pushback. I'm not sure which demographic category it is, but there's pushback, sometimes unfair pushback for some of the prominent newcomer politicians. You had Jasmin Lau, pushback about her statement about procreation, that people have it so good. Why would you want to sacrifice that? They meant what they said. They wanted to come out and say how they feel. In particular, Jasmin Lau, her statements. But the ground grinds them, sometimes to a pulp, right? And it can be quite formidable when that happens. Do you think we are not giving them a chance, going back to your refrain, not giving them a chance to change? Because each time you change, some things may go awry, and then you come down hard, then they lose the incentive to change.
It is part of the game that you have to, be ready to play when you take on a role of a politician, a political leader, or as a leader, as I mentioned. it is still incumbent for me on the leader to role model what we want to become as a society.
Example.
Meaning that if Jasmin thinks this is actually what she truly feels about the fertility problem that we have to solve, then she can bring it up. But she shouldn't think that it's not going to be pushed back, because I would actually also push back to say that, well, you know, we might become too comfortable to want to have children. But then at the same time, I will push back to say, why do we want fertility in the first place? We never even asked that question. So it's also incumbent on the leaders to move the entire electorate and people along, right, as we mature as a democracy, so that the people are also more informed in the pushback. If you say, oh, fertility is one issue, immigration is another issue, but actually the two are the same. The two should be talked about in the same breath and not in silo, because then it makes it seem as if we have a fertility problem, but then, hey, if it's for economic growth and we need the people, then it's not about raising the fertility rates only. We need to have a national conversation about how much immigration, how many migrants do we need?
Because they're all linked.
They're all linked, right? It is not about, we are not like Japan or South Korea where, you know, in terms of the continuity of the people, there's a certain, how do I put it to make sure, there is a certain ancestry. Right? We as a nation is anyway always multicultural, immigrant nation, right? But we don't have, because the immigration discussion becomes an economic one, a fertility discussion
we look
becomes...
at them in silos.
Exactly. So I think the leaders themselves must first make clear in their mind what problems and what opportunities are they trying to define.
Sorry, Vishwa.
Yes.
I don't understand the premise of your question though. Should leaders not expect pushback when they say something?
I'm just putting it on the table, right? You are saying it's par for the course.
Absolutely.
It should be, right?
You
It should
walked
be
in
par for the course.
knowing that this is what it is. Okay, so that's one school of thought. I'm just putting the schools of
Are
thought.
there other schools of thought?
Yeah, there are plenty of other schools of thought. You know, we'll go and have tetare and talk about it. But you see,
No, but for me, if they ask other schools of thought, that's worrying. If there are leaders who think that when they say something, that everyone should accept, there shouldn't be pushback. I think that's something very worrying.
And this is a very, very, very important point for today's discussion, right? When Lee Kuan Yew was at the helm, even when he was senior minister, he was very much, very influential in the tonality of our policy making, right? There was an unwritten assumption, the way I saw it, as the leaders have thought it through. The leaders you elected are doing things in your favor. You elected them to do the thinking. So when they then come up with a policy, your job is to support. That's a modified social contract. Your job is to support, not to poke holes. So that's been the style.
Could I push back a little bit on that as well? So we have, I think, as a nation also, we have created this image of Lee Kuan Yew. We have almost mythicized his time as well. The graduate mother scheme, which happened at about the time when I was born, when
that's
poorer
2 years ago.
poorer women were given incentives to be sterilized, right? Sterilize themselves, right? That is a dark moment in our history. Very dark moment. Within 2 years, within 2 years that policy was changed within a couple of years because people pushed back. This was Lee Kuan Yew at the height of his prowess, right? I remember a certain NMP pushing back on Singapore's racial policy in Parliament at that point. Certain Mr. Sadasivan, right? So it's not as if this didn't happen previously, right? I think now what has happened for sure, I think the scale of it, and now it's more visible. Because everybody has a social media account, so it's more visible. And the leaders also are reacting to it because they are online all the time, right?
Yeah. And you have more access lah.
You have more access,
people have more access to the leaders
for
now, right? In the past, you have to go to MPS, you might not even get to see your leader, 100%. Right?
No, I guess the point I'm making is, how far have we come from that traditional archetypal social contract?
I think
Have we actually shifted, or is it a fiction?
I don't think it's a significant shift in some ways, in the sense that the PAP still believes that, and I think they are to some degree right in believing that, because when we vote for the government, we give them the authority to do things. We don't take a census on everything, right? We don't take we don't do a referendum on everything, so we can't do that. That's not our style anyway. But at the same time, that doesn't mean once you vote, then the next time you speak is at the ballot box in 5 years' time, right? So active citizenry requires that we are involved all the time. So if we are to take this state sentiment seriously, I welcome the opposition presence. Then we should even welcome more individuals. You know, it used to be the case that when there were critics of PAP, if you criticize so much, why don't you join the opposition?
Or form a political party.
Right. So I think those days should be long gone, because it is everyone's duty, responsibility to contribute.
I can't agree more. I think we have to stop looking at democracy as, every 5 years at the ballot box, right?
Absolutely.
But it's a relationship. And then what happens in between is really important. It's where we are now, right? 1 year after GE2025. And this discussion, therefore, is an important one. I remember having a discussion for Academia SG for GE last year. And I liken the way we elect our representatives as almost we are the employers choosing, them. We are employing them because it's our taxpayers' money and we're choosing them to represent us, right? And I deliberately use that analogy because I think, with what Walid has said, you can't have this massive distance between the powers anymore, between the people and the leaders today.
Yeah.
It's not like before where you have to wait until they go around, walk around, then you can talk to them, right? And so I feel like if because of that, a statement like this, I want to say that intent is to say we are okay to mainstream disagreement or normalize disagreement, right? We have matured as a people, we have matured as a political party, meaning PAP, we have matured as a democracy, right? I'm interpreting Lawrence's words and saying that that's a great thing. I'm glad he made those
it's very important.
Then it's then what needs to happen for that to really come through. It's not going to happen overnight, obviously, because there's so much conditioning that has already gone into the people. We are very often called a very compliant society, very compliant people because of how we started, right? I would argue that when we first started, we needed leaders to be competent, to be confident, to be even audacious. So, okay, if you can do it, I'll let you do it, But I don't think now we need only that from the leaders. We also need the leaders to know how what they do is being felt by us.
So, Kenbon, I have this question for you, right? Do you feel that the ruling party or the government can afford to be a lot more magnanimous, can afford to be a lot kinder? I mean, we actually have a kindness movement. I don't think there's any other country in the world that has a kindness movement. But how kind have we become? How much kinder have we become? With all these things, all this talk, to be very honest, I'm saddened by what I see happening to Pritam Singh. I'm not taking a partisan position. He is an individual who stepped forward to serve the country in a particular way, joining the opposition. It's not that he suddenly becomes the enemy of the state. So while we talk about, more room for more latitude for us to have discussions between the people and the ruling party, there also has to be a shift. And I think that the ground is asking for that shift. A recalibration of the relationship between the ruling party and the opposition. Now, how much of this is true, especially when it comes to younger generation? Your generation and below.
42.
Okay,
Yeah, you're still
young.
Right.
No, I mean, it's a serious question. If you don't change that equation, the overall listening to each other is not going to happen.
I think of kindness and maybe not in the way that people think about it. Like the way that the incumbent has treated opposition has not been generally kind. I'll talk about one that's a bit more abstract. Like for example, the opposition often talks about trade-offs and not fully understanding what the trade-offs are, and therefore they look a bit uncertain in front of the people. Because if you don't have the information transparency from the government, you cannot make an accurate view on what the trade-offs are. So in the past, and even in present, there's always been an informational gap between what the government knows and what the people knows. And in the past, there is a implicit or even explicit trust that the government knows best. So they articulate the problem and then they solve the problem and tell you how they solve the problem. And the in-betweens, the trade-offs, what happens, how the pudding is made, nobody cares.
What happens to the black box?
Yeah, it's a black box. And that's the 3G period. So as we move to the 4G, and information becomes more freely available because of things like ChatGPT or even just general Googling, right? People are a bit smarter now. So there is a bit more desire to understand more about what happens in between. And one of the biggest gap that I think exists today is that the articulation of the trade-off is still not very clear to me.
Can you give an example?
Like for example, like the perfect example that was talked about, fertility.
And immigration.
Fertility and immigration. Immigration at the highest level is a solution for fertility problems in any nation, but obviously it's unpopular. So what is the government's view of this trade-off? Is it a case where we try our best? And my view is that the government seems to have articulated that we'll try our best when it comes to fertility, but it may be a bit of a lost cause, but we'll still try our best no matter what. And then the backup plan is that we have immigration, but we will not tell you that's the backup plan. So it's left implicit. And yet people don't really understand how did you come to that conclusion. It's almost as though like that it's a lost cause. It's kind of a lost cause, but we have a backup plan.
Okay.
So it's implicit, and as a Singaporean, I must come to that conclusion myself and try to piece it together. But I wish that the government was a bit more transparent in articulating what is the brick by brick that got them to that. And then I feel that then that will then expand the sort of the people's knowledge and the opposition's knowledge of what is the current thinking and try to add on to that or contradict that for a better outcome. So that's my definition of being kind. But in a less abstract way.
You have, in your own podcast, you have raised some of these kind of issues.
That's correct.
Right? How is it received by your audience, which is primarily young people, right?
I think generally as with most online media, right, the people who respond are the vocal minority.
So it may not be representative.
That's correct. Like a video may have 10,000 views. The number of comments is about 200-300. So that means that there are 9,000 over people whose views are not open and public. And my sense is that those are the silent majority with views that may not differ and that will likely differ from the majority vocal voices. So if you ask me what people really think, I don't know. But I mean, the indirect way of interpreting people's view is that when what you say is consistent throughout your many videos across a period of time, like many of us do, and people continue to view and resonate with that, then that is an implicit
proxy.
A proxy for that. People agree with what you're saying.
So I want to ask you, amongst us, you are the one who has fairly regular weekly interactions with young people, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it is a self-selected audience. Because these are all people interested in political science, for example. But nevertheless, that demographic is very important for us to understand. How do they view the point that I raised about magnanimity, about kindness, fair play, things like that? And those some of the young people, my family members that I speak to, my nieces and nephews, they seem to want greater fairness and transparency and what you said, Kian Boon, a lot more transparency about how you arrived at certain policy decisions and the dilemma.
100%. I think sometimes the differences between older people and younger people are a bit exaggerated. I think there's still some similar threats, they desire, the material stuff, they are still very concerned about it, the stuff that we were concerned about 20, 30 years ago, HDB, getting a job. Getting a job now is even more of a concern for them.
Especially with AI.
Especially with AI. But there are, I would say there are some differences between the generations, and one, the desire for social justice is definitely much more. I think people used to tolerate unfairness a bit more in the political scene. I think people are less likely to tolerate it. Now, it could be a shift. So it could be a shift of norms, and people really are more interested in social justice internationally, locally, and so on. I think there is a bit of that. It could also be that the more competent a leader is perceived to be, the more latitude people give them. So Lee Kuan Yew had a bit more latitude, to do things. It could be that as well. I'm just not sure. The other is, I think they are not afraid anymore, or not as afraid anymore. Not afraid anymore. So in terms of being pictured with the opposition, that just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that would never happen, right? Now somebody sees Pritam, for sure they will want a selfie and they'll put it up, right? They go to opposition rallies and then they put it up and so on. So I think the fear factor is not, I'm not saying it has completely gone, it's still there. So younger people, I think, fear less. Now, I think in 2025, Gen Zs did go for the PAP in larger numbers than a lot of people think. The difference, I would say, between Gen Zs and maybe my parents' generation, their support is softer. So they still trust the PAP, but it's a softer support, meaning they could shift, they could stay, they could shift. It's much more conditional. There is less loyalty. So that's the difference I see. Yeah.
We have covered some of the fundamental issues, but what I'd like to hear from each one of you is, what is your hope for Singapore in social and political aspects, less so economic, social and political? What's your hope? If you have an opportunity to sit down and talk to Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, what is it you would tell him with urgency? Anthea
probably has sat down with PM.
I think I go back to this, right? We even had a little bit of chat on this. I just think that we need to build a society where we mainstream differences, we normalize opposition, right? We don't actually, and that's going to solve a whole host of our issues, including, of course, discrimination, racism, and all of that. Because if we continue as a society, because the leaders also show us that is the case, in other words, we interpret disagreement as disloyalty. Not just to the party, but even maybe to Singapore, then I fear we will not progress as a people, and we won't mature as a society. And then you got more tension, as what Wally talked about, because, social justice means that I cannot see that there's a group of people who are being bullied, or I cannot see that this certain segment of society does not have access to the same opportunities, right? So until we have, we shift our way of looking at disagreement, and I brought you in because I was saying once to you, I said, hey, Vishwa, let's bring in a national debate again. Because I feel like LDDS was something we all celebrated when we were in school. It was so normalized, it was so mainstream. But now it's like we cannot disagree, otherwise it would be. But for me, if disagreement equals disloyalty, especially not just to the governing party, but to Singapore, I fear that we would then not just be silenced, but you get more mental health challenges because there's such a disconnect between who I want to be as a person, right, as a community, and what I'm allowed to do, right? The space I have. So
in this point,
I
just want to seek your clarification on this, right? There's this term, constructive criticism, okay? And I've had several political leaders tell me that, oh, Vishwa, we have no problem with criticism as long as it's constructive. I'm struggling to understand what constructive criticism is. So there was one particular minister that I asked, so can you tell me what is constructive criticism? Please don't tell me it is different from unconstructive criticism. So here's the answer. Right? The answer was, don't condemn the entire policy. Constructive criticism is where you point out the gaps and the flaws in that policy so that we can improve that policy. So I said, but what if I don't agree with the policy as a whole.
Yeah.
Is that not constructive? He said, yes, it's not constructive.
Yeah, see, exactly. So
It's
I
not
think
constructive. So you need to agree with what we as a
premise,
as a
yes.
team
Yeah.
have in our collective wisdom come up with. Your job is to poke a few holes and tell us how we can seal it, cover it.
but that's not what
But-
that's not how creativity works though. Creativity is exactly challenging even the premise. That means you go even more upstream to challenge what made you want to design the policy this way. So it's what we call, you go back to the first principle, which is the design principle. And the design principle means you have to challenge them what is behind you wanting to achieve this objective.
And sometimes you have to challenge the first premise.
Exactly. The first principle, right? And that, I think it was not taken as constructive and it's being seen as disruptive or disloyal, as I
But do you
mentioned.
think that is happening and will happen? Because who is the arbiter?
Exactly.
Who decides on
What is
whether
constructive?
or not this is constructive or not?
Yes.
You know, who decides?
So when I raised and wanted to participate in Walter Tessera's adjournment motion on liberal education during the whole Yale NUS discussion, he invited me to be part of it because I was working with so many young people. They wanted me to talk about youth activism, which I did, right? And that speech was a speech that I was
When
asked
you were
by-
in Parliament.
When I was in Parliament, and then because I'm very good, I'm very quiet. I send the speech before I deliver it, and then I was asked if I could actually hold back the speech, and I said that actually, if this platform for our people to raise their concerns is not even given to them,
Yeah.
which I think is a safer, very democratic way of raising their issues, then, then we can't be worried about all that's going on. Like at the same time, when I was bringing up the speech was also Hong Kong's umbrella revolution, right? And I said, this is such an opportunity for us, especially for me, since I'm non-partisan, that I'm actually representing a non-partisan issue that's being raised by a group of very important people for the future of Singapore. And I actually also said in my speech that the whole speech was really a collaboration between at least, I think, 10 young people collaborating on a Google Doc to put together that speech. But that's exactly how creativity comes about, acceptance of diversity comes about, because they are co-creating and co-owning, this speech, which is really to say we want to be trusted. We want to be seen and heard. We don't want to be paternalized.
And we don't want to be curated.
We don't want to be curated. We want that space to still be human and to actually be of value to society.
So when does it become generally unacceptable? Is it the content? Is it the tone? Is it the style?
Good question.
No, when does an argument
When you say generally acceptable to whom?
to not just the government, but to people in general?
Yeah.
This
Our
is-
society.
This is wrong.
I
Have
don't
there
like
been
I don't like the tone policing or your tone is not right.
Yeah, but it
and
happens
then,
quite
It
often.
happens a lot, and then I feel that these they are distractions. This criticizing the tone, and then another thing. Oh, what is your agenda? You have this. Forget about it. Whether the person's tone is correct, whether the person has an agenda, has no bearing on the substance of the criticism. So for me, the government must always look at the substance of the criticism. That's it. What makes the criticism strong or not is the substance. So I don't like the term constructive criticism because it allows the people in power to define what is it, and they are allowed to do it when somebody questions the premise. Why everything about public policy should be up for debate? There is nothing that should be should not be up for debate, including the premise, right?
Yeah.
And then it's very sneaky to say you cannot question the premise, but feel free to tweak one at the branch, and then I'll accept that. And look how open I am. I am accepting.
So the difference. I mean, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Our use of the term tweak versus change. They mean very different things.
Yeah.
tweak is a subtle acceptance of the principal argument,
Yeah.
which you then adjust on the borders,
Yeah.
right? But change is a reversal, right? But change is a bad thing. Lobbying is a bad thing. Some of these things have to change. Anti-lobbying, anyone because of the agenda idea.
Yeah.
So what's your agenda? There's nothing wrong with having an agenda, right? Since when has the word agenda become a bad word?
Just that activist should not be a bad word.
No, and just as mama is not a bad word.
Okay, the one you can say that.
Mama
Just
means
means uncle.
Mama means uncle.
I know.
Since when did mama, tambi, even tambi is a bad word. No, I mean brother. So I don't understand some of these things, So, Kianbun, what do you think about this? Do you feel that there has to be something deeper that needs to change?
I think structurally, to get the government to change their way of thinking that we only accept tweaks rather than change, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a journey. But obviously, that is a good angle to have.
But why do you think? Why do you think it's difficult?
All of us are stubborn to some extent, and this has served the government's purpose and has created a relatively good environment for Singapore. So it works, but whether it works in the future, we don't know. But I think what would be good is that the government continues to encourage more voices, alternative voices, so that before it gets to the stage where they've decided that this is the pseudo conclusion we come to, and you only allow adjustments, before you get to that step, allow the government to have the option to hear these dissenting voices. And one of the ways, at least in my of particular interest to me, is in alternative voices on social media. So like podcasters, today, right, sometimes when you talk about topic like the recent Minister and Bloomberg incident,
Yes.
before the verdict was out, there was a lot of reluctance from most of the podcasters in Singapore to talk about it because people were very worried that it's an OB marker. You cannot talk about this topic, and you can only wait till everything is settled before you can talk about it.
Because it is sub judice.
Yeah, the sub
That's what
judice
people are worried about.
It's hard to navigate because if you're not trained,
Or if it's not legal, let's say a racial issue.
Okay.
Talking about racial issue is not necessarily bad or wrong, but people are still very reluctant to do
Yeah,
that.
100%.
So I wish we reach a stage where the government is explicit about the fact that if you speak truth and you do it in good faith, you can talk about the issue. And
Or even if you make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it just needs to be if you speak truth, because sometimes we will make mistakes. I don't think that you should throw the book at the person immediately.
No, not throw the book. Just playing devil's advocate, right? If you want to talk about race, or even more sensitive religion, okay, and you want to say, this is my view. I feel that a particular religious group is oversensitive. Let's say that is your view. You're expressing it. The general concern that government has, and I can understand to some extent where they're coming from, is this could result in a whole series of reactions.
Sure.
Therefore, we rather you don't do it. Otherwise, we may have no choice but to throw the sedition book at you, And I can understand why, because the government has a responsibility to make sure that there's peace and order in society so that people can feel safe. So it is a tightrope. How much of latitude would you want to talk about some of these very sensitive, erstwhile OB markers?
I think in the past where information was not so free-flowing, I think it would be a challenge to control how and what you get the information.
Yeah.
So it will be challenging for even the government to control that information flow and what comes out of that knowledge. In modern day and time, if you wanted to radicalize, there are various ways for you to do that the government may or may not have control over. So therefore, to say that you're not allowed to talk about certain things as a podcaster because you're worried about the what ifs, I think it's mildly naive to think that can be controlled. Yeah.
What if the podcaster has an agenda?
Well, I think all podcasters have agenda.
I know.
Right? The agenda.
Exactly.
I mean, you are doing this because you want to promote political
No,
discourse.
because
I
you
think
all are
that's
friends. Okay, sorry.
I think that's a good agenda to have, right? So everybody does have an agenda. So I completely agree. I think in this day and age, you have to accept, using the example you gave, right? So you believe that one religion, the adherents are oversensitive.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you don't say it out loud because you're afraid that the government will clamp down.
Yeah.
But do you change your mind?
No.
If you don't change your mind, I don't have an opportunity to change your mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So, and there are all sorts of comments. I posted, I hope Spain wins Argentina. Somebody, there was of course, this is a normal troll, as in commented on my post, only radical Islamists like you support Spain.
What has that got?
Exactly, right. My point is these thoughts are always out
Exactly.
there.
They're always
out there. So we have to, how are you're gonna ban that account, there's another fake account that comes.
Exactly.
So how do we deal with it? This is the reality in this world. We are not operating in a pre-social media world where everybody gets information from Straits Times. That world is long gone already.
What times?
So my point is, even those difficult issues. So if somebody tells me, I feel Muslims are always oversensitive, let's have that debate, let's have that discussion. I want to change your mind. I don't want to suppress your opinion.
And I also think that on that note, two things, if I may. We really should try to not use the word tolerate so much, right? Normalize, coexist, mainstream. When you tolerate, I mean, the actual meaning of tolerate is that you are actually putting up with something that's annoying or unpleasant, right? Tak boleh tahan lah, right? And I don't think that's helpful when we keep using this tolerance, as a term. The other thing I want to share as a sort of as a parallel, for the longest time we have so much challenges in actually advocating for suicide prevention, right? Because the powers that be, and even in Parliament, I was told, we shouldn't even bring up suicide because then that might create more suicides. I went to talk to the different scholars and all that. It's not true, right? In fact, to Walid's point, the more you don't talk about something, the more you're letting it fester in a way that's very unhealthy.
Absolutely.
For both that person, but the community, and therefore the society at large.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, and maybe in conclusion, what I'm hearing is that there is an urgent need for change to happen. We don't need it to be dramatic in the way it happens, but we can't keep kicking the can down the road. So there's a need for it. But trust, you mentioned trust. Trust is so important.
So important.
That you can't just talk about it. You got to show it in your action.
And the PAP is in a position of advantage now because trust in government is still very high. Very high compared to other countries. It's ridiculously high.
Almost all countries, it's come down.
Exactly.
But ours is still...
So I think they are from a position of strength. To actually open up.
And be magnanimous.
Be
magnanimous and so signaling, because increasingly the government doesn't have the monopoly on wisdom. It's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of what's happening, complexity of policies. Right? So they do need help from people on the ground, not just people who form these committees, but lay people may give you common sense based
lived
solutions. This is 100%. What I think.
Exactly, the lived reality.
But more than anything else, what my strongest takeaway from this conversation is we need to have a lot more conversations, sensible conversations about things that are everyday issues, things about religion that is taboo. Okay, we need more people, more platforms, more forums talking about it so that you demystify it. When you demystify, you reduce overall level of speculation.
But can I add that when we want to create these spaces to discuss these issues, let's not be reductive. And that's definitely don't binarize issues. No one today lives a single issue life. Well, I would actually argue that they didn't used to in the past, but now it's 100% not the case. So we cannot just only talk about religion or even mental health or political engagement on its own. It links to everything else that makes us who we are as a human society.
I think it's very important for us to distill it down. The government needs to trust that every one of us, with the exception of the extreme radicals, and there are extreme radicals, not just
Not
in
those who
religion.
support Spain. Yeah.
Yeah, not just the Muslims who support Spain. Okay, but the fact that we are able to talk like this,
Yeah.
I think it's important, and let's not make these discussions binary about, if you say this, you are against the government. If you say this, you're pro opposition, and so on. But I think there's an urgent need for us to be able to talk through things that are sensitive, are deemed sensitive, demystify them, so that we can continue to put them in their respective places as a society. So I'd like to invite each one of you to give one sentence as your wish for Singapore starting tomorrow.
Okay, so I wish for more political openness. One sentence, right? I wish for more political openness, which
I knew you were
which
gonna do this.
manifests itself in a few ways.
Okay.
So in the electoral scene, make it fairer and easier for people to compete. In the civil society space, allow people to make mistakes sometimes, allow people to criticize without assuming the worst of them from the get-go. Right? And even if they have the worst of intentions, which very few people do, but even if they do that, some wisdom can still come out of them. Right? And I think to enact all of this, I think the government needs to understand that it isn't the only smart person in the room. It may be the smartest person in the room, but it is not the only smart person in the room.
Depends on how you define smart.
Ordinary people, I give you just this example, right? If you're talking about, I think Anthea had a meta-critic of the TFR. Mine is a bit simpler, right? We have all the scientific advancements already. Why is IVF so expensive? Why is it not fully Medisave deductible? Why aren't people given women not given financial incentives to freeze their eggs when they're 25, for instance? These are things which are very doable, but it still costs ridiculous. So my point is, clearly there are some ideas that the PAP hasn't thought of, that ordinary people
Or
have
maybe
thought
they
of.
have thought of it and dropped it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I think that's just approach. I think people want a confident government, but people still want a humble government.
Thank you. Kenwood?
I think leadership starts from the top. I think if I had a chance to talk to PM Lawrence Wong, I would tell him to be bold. I think don't just embrace tweaks, also embrace change. And that starts with really listening to voices that you may not really want to hear, but are important to hear. I think that's my wish.
Thank you. Thank you, Kenwood. Anthea?
My wish is for our leaders, and then hopefully because they embody that then the society becomes that, to come from a place of not fear, not survival, not fight or flight. It was and it needed to be when we first started, but we're no longer in that same place as we were 60 years ago. So I would wish for our leaders to come from a place of strength, as Walid said, but also from a place of love. For the love of the country, but also for the people, right? The individuals, because it's actually from that place of love. And as Tommy Cole said, when you hear a loving critique, you know that critique, not necessarily criticism, but the critique comes from a fellow lover of Singapore.
Yeah.
Like you, and I think if you come from that place, then that space to open up, you won't be in a defensive space already. You are then sharing this space of love for, like I said, not just Singapore as a sort of a concept, an economic miracle, but actually for the people of Singapore, which actually would include everyone who's resident here, including migrant workers. I wish our leaders come from a place of strength and love when they govern and when they speak and then when they argue and then when they debate.
Well, for me, I think we should really go back and embrace the fundamental legal principle of you are innocent until proven guilty. Somehow, somewhere along the way, we seem to have lost that and flipped it on its head. You are guilty until you're proven innocent. I think we need to rethink that
100%.
and fix that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.